So I'm very happy that we have Brian Kelley here today to give us a very interesting talk regarding the future of the transportation. And I know Kelly Brian is very busy, and in my short stay with him, picking up the food, he got a couple calls already. So I really appreciate Brian coming here today.
Yeah.
And, discuss the
Great to be here.
in the future. So Brian is currently the toll collection system manager and the Ohio Turnpike and Infrastructure Commission was working on future technology on the road related to autonomous, connected, and electric vehicles, EV in-road charging, solar energy development, toll modernization, and smart mobility projects. Brian has over 30 years of public sector information technology experience as CIO, CTO. Prior to joining the commission, Brian served as the Chief Information Officer for Portage County, Ohio. Under his leadership, the county received international, national, state, and regional recognition for highly successful enterprise-wide IT projects. So Brian is recognized as one of the government technology's top 25 doers, dreamers, and drivers in public sector innovation 2012. And more recently, Brian was recognized with the Government Technology Special District 2021 Midwest Technology Innovation Leadership Award. Without further ado, let's welcome Brian to give us a talk.
And I really come from the University of Toledo because my father was here as a student. So that's where my history at the University of Toledo started many years ago. This particular presentation I've been working on for well over 5 years. And it's a work in progress. And what you're going to get today is the latest version and with a new twist. Back in 2018, the Vice President and Chief Information Officer for Penske Automotive and myself, we co-presented up in Detroit. And the title for our presentation was Connected Autonomous and Electric Vehicles, the Road Reimagined. Well, today I've added a new title. The good, the bad, and reality. So let's take a drive on this road. So back in the 1950s, articles in Popular Science, Newsweek, Boy's Life started to appear talking about future transportation, electric, autonomous vehicles that would someday hit the road. And since the 1950s, we've been waiting for this to become a reality. This is a cool article here pointing to an autonomous highway system test that GM and RCA were doing back in the 1950s using magnets in the car and a steel cable embedded in the road. So they were working on the concept of autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles back then. And then some of us my age and older grew up with the Jetsons. And we wondered, since we were little kids, when is life going to be like the Jetsons? When are we going to have a watch that we can speak to people, you know? When are we going to have a flat screen TV, a camera that's a pill that can explore our body and take pictures, be able to talk to our boss on camera remotely, choose by each member of the family what they want for dinner. And today we not only have DoorDash and Uber, but we're also now getting into 3D printing of food where everybody could have whatever they want prepared for them. And the ability to have robots and virtual assistants in our home who are helping us in our life and to do our chores. And so now we see all of this in the 21st century and more becoming a reality, and flying cars. Well, to understand the future, we have to look back at the past. And where I want to start right now is looking at technology adoption. In the United States, if we go back in time, the traditional way for technology to be adopted and absorbed, it started in government, mostly in the area of defense and the census, with being able to count the American population and being able to calculate missile projections in the Department of Defense. And so the first computers were developed in government. And from those first computers, they went to business, to the enterprise. And we created financial accounting systems, payroll systems, and then eventually the cost of those systems came down and they came into our homes. And some of us in this room, not many of us, can remember when a Texas Instrument calculator, right, costed well over $100, depending on the model, $200. And today we have multiple devices with scientific calculators and scientific calculators on the internet that we paid absolutely nothing for. And this was all going along like this until the internet went commercial in the 1990s. And all of a sudden, people could access the internet. They could have a device that accessed the internet, first with personal computers, then with notebook computers, and now the smartphone. And this whole paradigm of technology adoption and absorption, it switched. The consumer is now the driver of technology and innovation, thanks to Apple, thanks to Amazon, and many other of the other companies that we are loyal to and expect to deliver us our personal information technology. And so today, it flows from the consumer to the enterprise to defense and government. Back here, if you wanted to use really cool technology, you went to work because you couldn't own it at home. Now, you have the really cool technology at home, and when you get to work, you're using less technology usually, or older technology than what you actually have at home or in your hand. All right. But what has enabled us to be where we are today in the 21st century is technology convergence. All of these things coming together at the exact same time. The Internet of Things, everything as a service, the cloud, connectivity, artificial intelligence, digital twins, different types of computing, edge computing, high performance computing, quantum computing, robotic process automation. All of these coming together as one, which allows for major paradigm shifts in our society. In transportation that we're going to focus on today, it's all of these things plus what we call the Internet of Vehicles, which I'm going to be introducing you to. And these are all moving us towards a massive paradigm shift that is going to change our lives, our communities, and definitely how we get around. The problem that we're trying to solve today is with all of this, which we all deal with. Congestion, construction, accidents, distracted driving. We're really not that much interested anymore in really driving. We're interested in drinking while we're driving, whether it be coffee or alcohol. We're interested in looking at Facebook, sending text messages, watching movies, doing our hair. This woman down here was one of our former Turnpike customers. She's coming out of the Portage County Municipal Court. She was arrested on the Turnpike because a semi-truck passed her. The driver looks down, and the baby is spread out on the steering wheel, and she's breastfeeding the baby going 65, 70 miles an hour. With an airbag behind the baby that would come out up at speeds upwards of 200 miles an hour if she crashed or was hit head on. A state trooper pulled her over and cited her for criminal endangerment. Sadly, 40,000 people a year die in traffic crashes. And that's a staggering number that we've allowed that to occur. The leading cause of death for teenagers in this country is not guns, it's not suicide, it's motor vehicle crashes. Six teens, age 16 to 19, die every day from motor vehicle crashes. Upwards of 100 people every day. And we were doing really good at bringing this number down. And then during COVID, people are driving less, but the speed at which people drive accelerated, and we're actually, the number of deaths in 2021 skyrocketed to new numbers. So to understand the future, we must look back at the past. Well, this is Columbus, Ohio, and this was in the 1890s. This is the Columbus Buggy Company. Columbus, Ohio was the buggy manufacturing mecca of the United States. In fact, it was said that 6 out of every 9 buggies came from them in the world, from the Columbus Buggy Factory. The founder of this was a man, Clifford Firestone. You recognize the last name. It was Harvey Firestone's older brother that started the Columbus Buggy Factory. And this was the mode of transportation. Everybody wanted a horse and a buggy, right? And that's what everybody knew. And Harvey actually began as a salesman with the company down in Columbus. And they're focused on what people wanted from the past and what they wanted in the present. In 1894, an article appeared in the London Times on the Great Manure Crisis. You see, a horse puts down, on average, up to 35 pounds of manure every day. And on the streets of London, New York City, all the major streets in the world, massive amounts of manure were on the streets, as well as urine, and as well as horse carcasses, because horses would just die on the street. And in this article in the London Times in 1894, they predicted that in 9 years, there would be 50 feet of manure on the streets in London. And they just couldn't imagine how we're going to deal with this. And today we're dealing with problems we don't know how we're going to deal with. There was a man here in the United States that had an answer how to get rid of all of this manure. His name was Henry Ford. And Henry wasn't working on the past. He wasn't working in the present. He was working in the future. That's my son Jonathan, a number of years ago, sitting in the Henry Ford Museum next to Henry, thinking along with Henry about the future. And it was really Thomas Edison that gave Henry Ford a job in his electric plant that allowed Henry Ford to accumulate some money to begin tinkering with his ideas about what would become the automobile. And in 1903, he incorporated the Ford Motor Company. In Columbus, Ohio, they're still building new buggy factories, okay? But they started to realize things are going to change. This is a cool picture. So this is 1900, Fifth Avenue, New York City, 1900. These are all horses and buggies. There's one automobile circled over here. Same street, same day, 13 years later. Full of vehicles. Henry Ford was able to switch, and those working also along with him in the automotive industry, they were able to switch the mode of transportation from horses and buggies to automobiles. In 1908, Henry Ford started mass producing automobile vehicles. In 1913, he automated the assembly line, and in 1913, the Columbus Buggy Factory went bankrupt and closed their doors. So this is one of my quotes, thinking about all of this, that I share with you. If you're focused on the past or the present, you just might miss the future. And Columbus, Ohio missed the future back then because they were focused on the past or the present. And as those buggy factories down there shut down, they went into an economic downturn unlike anything they had ever experienced. Now what's interesting, at the same time, Henry Ford and his friend Thomas Edison were not just focused on the combustible engine, they were working on electric vehicles. And there were a lot of electric vehicles being manufactured back in the early 1900s. Here's one charging right here on the left. And here's the Edison's vehicle that he had come up with. But Henry Ford determined that electric isn't what people wanted. The consumer wanted the combustible engine. So we parted ways with electric vehicles, and we're now coming back to them, right? Well, today we have a vehicle, the average vehicle, pretty much from 2015 forward, that is outfitted with what we call connected vehicle technology. And these vehicles have the ability to connect to the internet with Wi-Fi, as we know, connect through our smartphone, be able to download and bring up apps on the infotainment center in the car system and broadcast information out and receive information in. In 2023, this year, GM will, in some of their models, will start to be able to have download updates to the vehicle at 4 terabytes per hour. Ford in 2022, every Ford vehicle coming off the assembly line in 2022 is outfitted with communication technology, which will allow the cars to talk to themselves as they drive down the road and to talk to infrastructure on the road as well. And everything that is within these cars that goes on has the potential to be broadcast out. So, airbag deployment, heavy braking, the car losing traction with the road, the speed, the direction, all of that information can be broadcast out for other vehicles to pick up in the future and act upon, or to be able to allow transportation providers such as the Ohio Turnpike to know where and when an airbag deployed before we even get the call that there's been an accident, or to know that cars are losing traction with the road at the 165-mile marker, indicating that there's water buildup, ice buildup, allowing us to go and treat that before there's an accident. These cars have over 100 million lines of software code, and that number is going to continue to grow substantially as we continue to build these cars, which are actually more technology than they are vehicle. This is cool. So here we have the millions of 100 million lines of software code in the modern high-end car. Here's Facebook, Windows Vista, XP is probably in here, the Boeing 787, an Android, the Hubble Space Telescope, the F-22 Raptor fighter jet, and down here the space shuttle. This is what is in your automobiles of today. Pretty impressive. And there's a lot of different features within the car. The bad part is they all operate off of computer chips, which, as we know, in the last couple of years, we've had a customer supply chain issue where we couldn't get those chips, so we couldn't manufacture cars. That's actually affected GM and Ford from being able to move forward on electric and autonomous cars. Sadly, this week, GM announced they're cutting 10% of their workforce as they try to restructure and recover from COVID and prepare themselves for where the automobile industry is going in the future. The other scary part of this that I'll just touch base on is with all of this technology and all this connectivity, we now have a lot of cybersecurity issues that we have to be concerned about in the vehicles of today and tomorrow, and the ability for hackers to be able to infiltrate the car through many different ways and to overtake this car. So the one thing that we do have, which is really cool, it's called the Auto ISAC, the Auto Information Sharing Center, and they bring together all the auto manufacturers. I'm a member of that, and we share information and share knowledge, work together on addressing the cybersecurity issue in the cars of today and the cars of tomorrow, to prevent cars from being disabled or attacked by cyber attacks. So I mentioned we now have what we call the Internet of Vehicles. And the Internet of Vehicles basically allows technology and data to come together, networking within the vehicle, allows the vehicle to communicate in real time with their human drivers, pedestrians, other vehicles, roadside infrastructure, and fleet management systems. So a brief concept of how this will work is that you're driving towards a traffic light. The traffic light is green, so you're going to proceed through. The traffic light is going to sense in the other direction. A car is going to come, a vehicle is going to come through that red light and hit you. So the traffic light will notify your car. A warning will go off, giving you the opportunity to slow down, react to that situation before you get broadside hit. It will do the same for that other vehicle. And as that technology in cars evolves, eventually the car will react on its own. So if you don't react, the car will react, the vehicle will react for you to avoid the crash. Down at Ohio State, they developed a paint that you can paint crosswalks with, and that paint interacts with a digital stick that a blind person uses. And so as the blind person is maneuvering through the crosswalk, that stick and that paint contact to tell the traffic light that there's a blind person in the crosswalk, and the traffic light, the communication system there can then let the cars know that are coming that there is a blind person in the crosswalk. So a lot of other application with the Internet of Vehicle technology. And so today we talk about the Internet of Vehicles. We talk about intra-vehicle systems within the vehicle, vehicle-to-vehicle systems where we have cars communicating with cars as you're traveling down the road, vehicle-to-infrastructure, V2I, vehicle-to-cloud, V2C, and then vehicle-to-pedestrian. And this technology is rapidly evolving and being adopted within the vehicles of today and coming off the assembly lines in the near future. So the connected vehicle is cool. And we have millions and millions of these vehicles hitting the road today, and the technology in them continuing to adopt. One big setback was during COVID and not being able to get the chips to put in the new vehicles. And so sadly, some of the security features, safety and security features in the vehicles that have been purchased in the last 3 years, those features are disabled because they didn't have the chips to put in those vehicles. So we're going to go through a period of time where today's vehicles have become much less safe because they don't have those chips. So we have the emergence of electric vehicles, and it was really, we can credit Elon Musk. We really weren't that interested here in the United States in electric vehicles. They weren't sexy before Tesla. Now he's produced some really cool cars. And Tesla last year produced and sold over 161,000 electric vehicles. They're the leading electric vehicle manufacturer in the United States. Second was Ford, but they just got passed up by GM that just this year put out 20 new models of electric vehicles. And GM and Ford are now offering every type of vehicle that the consumer might want, from the truck to SUVs. And I think the Equinox GM is around $33,000. So GM has also said that by 2035, they're no longer going to manufacture a combustible engine. So that date has been set, and many other auto manufacturers are joining and developing dates between 2035 and 2040 to no longer manufacture combustible engines, only to provide electrical vehicles. And then there are some states like California, and I think New York is now moving forward too. New York has passed legislation prohibiting the sale of combustible engine vehicles starting in 2035. So you will not be able to buy a car with a combustible engine in California starting in 2035. And so there are some really cool things that electric vehicles offer to us, just beyond just using electricity as a fuel to transport ourselves. We can actually use our vehicles to get energy from the grid through our homes, or we can push back energy from the vehicle to our homes back to the grid. And that's a very interesting concept for us to be able to do. But we'll talk about some of the challenges with electric vehicles, towards the end. What I really think is important for us to understand, though, is back to this. In order for us to switch from combustible engines to electric, the consumer has to be convinced to do the switch, right? And I think that's the problem. Right now, range anxiety and not being able to find EV charging stations to fuel your vehicle is a real problem to get consumers to want to purchase an electric vehicle, right? Not knowing how long that battery life is going to be, and then hearing stories about people having to replace batteries at $20,000, or electric vehicle fires, and people being told by GM, Tesla, don't put your electric vehicle in the garage because it may have a fire, and if that happens, you want the vehicle parked outside so your home doesn't burn down, because there have been incidents of that occurring. And so I think this is going to be key as to how quickly we're able to fully adopt electric vehicles in our society. Now, in Sweden and Norway, especially in Norway, over 50% of all vehicle sales in Norway are electric vehicles. But in those countries, they have a much better overall transportation system to offer to their citizens than we do here in the United States. But we'll see. Here in the United States, the latest numbers I've seen are between maybe 5% of the vehicles being sold. I said that Tesla sold 161,000 electric vehicles last year. GM was a little around over 26,000. Ford was over 10,000. Both GM and Ford say they're positioning themselves to soon take over Tesla. So that's something we'll watch. And then there's also an ongoing debate now between the electric lithium battery and hydrogen fuel cells. And most working closely with these two technologies say that it's going to be at least another 10 years before this becomes considered mainstream. So we'll see. I mean, one of the problems in the United States is we just don't have enough EV charging stations out there, and we can't, we haven't developed the business method, right, to install those. The electric companies aren't interested in providing those. Some companies like Walmart and some gas stations are now starting to get into deploying EV charging stations. If you rent an apartment, you don't have a garage to have an EV charger. So where do you get that charge from? So this will be interesting. And I know the University of Toledo is part of a hydrogen hub initiative that's in play right now with a grant request going into the Department of Energy. So we'll see how that goes. And then we have autonomous vehicles. And some really cool stuff going on all over the world. We have autonomous tractors that are out harvesting and plowing fields. We have autonomous snowplows in Norway clearing runways. Bowling Green, I think, has some of these little carts here. I don't know if you do at the University of Toledo, that will deliver you food and beverage. You just go on an app. Do you have those here? Not yet. Kroger is working on an autonomous vehicle that will deliver your groceries to you. We have semi-trucks going back and forth across the United States in autonomous mode with a driver, but they say that on the majority of those trips, there's very little interaction between the driver having to take over the vehicle. Autonomous mail carts delivering mail to people's neighborhoods. So, and of course, we're working towards the autonomous vehicle. GM has patents with vehicles with no steering wheels, no foot pedals. Ford had one patent or request into the federal government, but they just withdrew that request. So I'm not sure, I didn't see the whole explanation as to why they did that. So with autonomous vehicles, there's 5 levels of automation. Level 0 is no automation. Level 1 is the human driver is help but still driving. Most of the vehicles today on the road fall between level 1 and level 2. At level 3, at this level, the vehicle can drive itself in some situations, but the human driver is required to step in. And where we are here is really right in here with level 3. We're definitely not in the middle of level 3, and we're definitely not over here. This is where we want to be, at full level 5 automation, where the vehicle drives itself. And where the automotive industry sees this going is when we get to this level, we will probably not be purchasing our own vehicles anymore. We'll be subscribing to a vehicle, whatever vehicle we want, at whatever moment we want it. If we want a truck, a van, a shuttle bus, an SUV, a car, we'll go on an app and we'll schedule, we'll order, subscribe to a service that guarantees that autonomous vehicle will be at our doorstep and transport us to everywhere we want to go. Again, the whole purpose to get here is one of safety, hopefully reducing those 40,000 fatalities every year. Is this going to eliminate all of them? No. But we really think, for those of us working on this, that autonomous vehicles, when they're fully developed and ready to be adopted and used on the road, will be much safer than the way in which we're driving today. The other thing is, there are millions of Americans that cannot drive a vehicle because they're handicapped, they're elderly. That's not some of us now, but it may be some of us in the future. And this level of autonomous vehicles will allow those individuals a mode of transportation and travel in their lives that they don't know today. So that's another great outcome of where we're headed. And hopefully, someday, this will be us. Hopefully our hair won't be white, but it may be enjoying a ride in an autonomous vehicle that takes us on short trips, long trips, wherever we want to go. And when we get to this point, we're trying to reimagine how our city is going to change, because are we going to need the same amount of parking spaces, less parking spaces? Maybe we can reclaim some territory in our major cities. Will we need garages at our home? Electric or autonomous vehicles don't require the same width of roads, so maybe our roads become smaller. In Michigan, they're working on a 40-mile section of road that is a special autonomous vehicle corridor that they're doing a pilot test on, with the idea that maybe in the future we have lanes devoted on the road specific for autonomous vehicles. In Dubai, they already have constructed roads just for autonomous vehicles to travel on. There are a lot of issues, far beyond the technology issues. We look at autonomous vehicles, safety, how are we going to register vehicles, driver licensing, education, liability, insurance, reporting. How's law enforcement going to pull over an autonomous vehicle? How are the truck drivers of automated trucks going to be trained and licensed? And then data privacy issues, cybersecurity issues, jurisdictional regulations, and then how are these vehicles going to coexist in a world with regular convention vehicles? So there's a lot of things beyond the automotive and technology part that we've got to figure out, and a lot of this is in the works right now in the beginning stages. So just to share with you, how much time do we have? Till 2?
About 10.
All right. So I want to now share with you some of the things that we've been doing at what I'll call ground zero or near ground zero, with the things that I've been talking about with connected, autonomous, and electric vehicles on the Ohio Turnpike. So the Ohio Turnpike is a 241-mile road from Indiana to Pennsylvania. We have 3 lanes for the majority of the road in each direction. We have 1,300 lane miles. And one of the cool features of our road is that we have what are called triple trailers. These are semi-trucks that can carry 3 trailers. There's only 20 states in the United States that allow triple trailers. Ohio is one of those states, and the only road in Ohio where triple trailers are allowed are on the Ohio Turnpike. So when I talk to companies about doing pilot projects and test runs, I offered them the Ohio Turnpike as a possible test road because their autonomous vehicles are going to see these triple trailer combinations, which they're not going to see on most other roads in the country. I'm also talking to those companies that have these triple trailers like FedEx and UPS on innovative projects that we might want to do in regards to electrifying those fleets and testing that out. We have what we call breakdown lots where those triple trailers get separated into single units, and we have 7 lots across the Turnpike where we offer that service to companies like UPS, FedEx, and others. So we're looking to partner up with them. Another cool thing is that back in 1984, we had a telco company come to us and they said, hey, we want to put fiber across the entire Turnpike. What would it take for you to allow us to do that? So we began negotiating. Well, they got their fiber in the right of way. What we got in return were 24 strands for our exclusive use, free, installed. And we got to use those 24 strands however we want to use them with our own equipment. And then they pay us $2,000 per mile per year from 1984 going forward. And there's been an escalator in the contract. So they're paying us for their fiber and giving us free fiber. So this was really at the beginning of when fiber was starting to be installed, in our country. So we're fibered end to end with 24 strands. We're well prepared for the future here in the 21st century. And we just completed a $12 million upgrade of all the fiber equipment, increasing the bandwidth and capacity of that fiber network for where we're going in the future. So one cool project, and this was the first one that I got involved with when I got to the Turnpike in 2017, we did a pilot project. And we used a technology called DSRC technology, which is a shortwave radio technology. We thought in the United States that this was going to be the primary method in which vehicles would communicate. And unfortunately, the FCC changed directions. They took back the DSRC bandwidth and restricted it, and DSRC has kind of fallen off. In Europe, it's still full steam ahead. Toyota was the one that got hit really hard. They invested everything they had in DSRC technology, so when that got shut down, their connected vehicle technology was really paralyzed. Ford and GM had been positioning themselves to go with either DSRC or with other types of connectivity like 5G and other types of vehicle-to-vehicle connectivity. So what we did with this particular project is we took 38 of our medium-duty, heavy-duty trucks, and we put we connected into the onboard unit of the vehicle, and then broadcast out and information on the truck's operation. So the truck moving, the speed, the direction, the snowplow up, down, the salt spreader on or off, the rate of salt being spread, the light on or off, and being able to get operational data from these vehicles as they travel down the road. Be able to get the temperature off the road because the snowplow has a temperature gauge, and so we're able to get that temperature, communicate it through the truck, back through the network. And then we established a human interface within the vehicle, an iPad running HTML5 that could broadcast the weather, the curve speed based on truck location, work zones, and incidents occurring based on where the truck was located. These are the vehicles that we installed that technology in. We installed it along a 50-mile section of the Turnpike from Amherst, Ohio to Streetsboro, Ohio. We put these DSRC wireless units up at intervals along the road. With this technology, we could also pick up anonymous connected vehicles that were on the road. We couldn't identify the exact type of vehicle they were, but we could identify their presence and their speed and their direction. We also then created a dashboard where all of this data came back to the dashboard so we could see where the trucks were located, what they were doing, not only on the map, but a tabular view that showed us the operation of those vehicles. So that was really a cool project. We did that with Cisco. We're one of about 90 DSRZ projects that were done across the United States. And then in several years back, 4 years back, I got together with Ford at a conference, and we had breakfast together, and we took some scratch paper and we scratched this out. And this was a really cool idea that we did with Ford. They developed an app that could connect to a smartphone, that would connect into the infotainment center on the Ford vehicle. The smartphone would connect into their cloud, connected to our cloud, and we'd be sending them RSS feeds of incidents and traffic conditions on the Ohio Turnpike. So I took one of our Ford trucks, outfitted with the correct infotainment center that this system would work with, connected it to my smartphone, downloaded the app, and then took a drive. And it tested very successfully. It was driving down the road based upon your location. This is the infotainment center screen. Alerts would come up based on our location and what was going on. And then we've begun to install electric charging stations along the Turnpike, both Tesla and non-Tesla. We're continuing to do that today. And then the one big project that I've now been given, I've inherited it from our former chief engineer who abruptly quit a year ago. When he left, they gave the project to our traffic engineer, and then he left in December, and I guess I was next in line. So this is a $274 million construction technology project to modernize our toll system across the Turnpike. Currently, on the Turnpike, we are what's called a gated system. You do not get on or off unless the gate lifts. The gate only lifts if you're getting on, if you take a ticket, or you have an easy pass transponder, RFID transponder in your vehicle. You only get off the Turnpike by the gate lifting if you've rendered payment through cash or credit, or if you have an easy pass transponder that will lift the gate. Every vehicle that comes onto the Turnpike, we have scales embedded in the road. We weigh the vehicle, we measure its height, we count the number of axles on that vehicle, we establish the easy pass transponder connection. That all occurs by the time it gets to the toll booth. When it leaves, we reclassify the vehicle again. We count the axles again, and then we correlate the reading at the beginning, the reading at the end, and we reconcile the two. That's the way the current system works. Our new system that we're going to, we're using over-the-road tolling. We're still going to take cash and credit. So this is one of our new barrier plazas. If you've been to the west of Toledo, this is at the 49-mile marker. And so we're still going to take cash and credit because 30% of our customers pay by cash and credit, 70% have Easy Pass. So we want to continue collecting that 30%. We have new high-speed lanes, which will go down the middle. If you have an Easy Pass transponder, you just fly 70 miles on the road, no gates. If you don't want to stop and pay cash, we're going to take a picture of your license plate, correlate it with your BMV record, and send you a nice bill. Currently, we have 31 toll plazas. These are these little square diagrams here. With this new system, we have 2 of these barrier plazas, one at the 211-mile marker, one at the 49, one when you get on at Indiana. And these ones in red are all toll plazas that we're going to close down. It's just not cost efficient for us to keep these open. So this will be free travel if you're just traveling in here or down there. Currently, we take in about $400 million a year. Most of that is toll revenue. some of it is money that we get for utility and right-of-way leases and concessions of gas, food, beverage that we sell in our service plazas. So that's the new barrier plaza, how it will operate, and we're leveraging LiDAR technology and also piezo sensors embedded in the road, as well as loops in the road, sensors that will classify vehicles and measure their overheight. We're also going to put in weigh in motion virtual stations at 12 locations across the Turnpike. This is LiDAR technology and cameras installed on gantries over the road that will be weighing the commercial vehicles as they go down the road rather than when they get on, and sending us alerts on who's overweight. There's the new plaza at 49, the 49-mile marker. And we're converting, we have 187 lanes. So we're converting these one by one from the old system to the new system and turning these lanes live. And then when we get done with all 187, we turn the whole system live on, including these barrier plazas, and we'll be on the new system of tolling. We're also adding two new protocols. So we have the EasyPass TDM RFID transponder. We'll also be adding two more transponders. One is called 6C, the other is called CGO. These are transponders that are used on other toll roads across the country. And within the next, I would say, 2 to 3 years, we'll have international operability between all of the tolling roads across the country. So whatever transponder you're using in your car will take you on any toll road, any bridge, any tunnel, anywhere in the United States, and collect your money that way. The other big change that's coming in our society with electric vehicles is that with gas, the federal government and the state, every time we purchase a gallon of gasoline, there is a state tax and a federal tax associated with that purchase of fuel. And that we use that money in the United States to fund infrastructure, replacement and repair. So as we go to electric vehicles and gasoline disappears and the revenue from gas tax declines, we're now looking at what is that replacement going to be, and that's what we call RUC, road usage charges. And so that will either be a charge for every mile that we drive, or it will be a fee that they calculate, and when we go to renew our license, we'll pay that additional fee. I guess all of our hopes as consumers is that fee will not be greater than the gas tax that we're currently paying at the pump. The difficult part is most of us do not know that we're paying a gas tax at the pump. We only know the per gallon part. So that will be a change that we'll see coming in the future. There's currently test projects in Oregon and Oklahoma where they're trying out these new road usage charge concepts to see how they work on the road. And then another cool thing that I'm working on is in the future, it's very possible that we not charge our cars at an EV charging station. It could be that we charge our cars by driving in a special lane on the road that charges our vehicle as we go. We call that in-road inductive charging. And so I have a collaboration that I'm leading with a research center at Utah State, and also Purdue is part of that. And then the Pennsylvania Turnpike partner out at the Youngstown Warren Regional Chamber. And what we're doing is looking on pioneering a multi-state commercial inductive, stationary, and in-motion charging infrastructure for medium and heavy-duty vehicles along major freight corridors. So Pennsylvania Turnpike is already committed in 26, 27 to begin building a 5-mile structure of road that will have inductive charging built into the concrete or the pavement. We're a little bit more bullish on what we want to do on the Ohio Turnpike, but this collaboration, we actually meet every 2 weeks to move this forward. I've also been working on some solar energy development on the Ohio Turnpike. It's come to a standstill because after pursuing options, our analysis has shown that we're getting electric far cheaper than we could than if we get it from the sun. So at the moment that the rate of our electric rate goes up to where it's beneficial to leverage solar, we'll do that. But I worked on that for about 2 years of research, so a lot of information there. And then this year, the Ohio Turnpike, and I'm the leader at the Ohio Turnpike on this initiative. It's called the Smart Belt Coalition, and it's Michigan, it's PA, and it's Ohio. I think our members are shown here better. So in Pennsylvania, we have the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, Pennsylvania Turnpike, Carnegie Mellon, and Penn State. In Ohio, we have the Ohio Turnpike, the Ohio State University, the Transportation Research Center. We're talking with the University of Cincinnati, and you could potentially maybe find the University of Toledo as well. As a research affiliate, we could certainly explore that. In Michigan, it's MDOT. They do not have any toll roads yet in Michigan. They're talking about it. And then Kettering University, Michigan State, and the American Center for Mobility. And so what we do is we collaborate from a regional perspective. We started back in 2016. So our purpose, our vision and mission, the purpose is to organize for the economic benefit, safety, workforce, and welfare of the partner states, to be a multi-jurisdictional innovation network that fosters the advancement of connected and automated vehicle technology. Electrification is also part of that. And then create a mechanism for transportation agencies, academic institutions, others to collaborate on these type of projects. Our one really cool project that we completed in October of 2020, and this is a familiar bridge in the Toledo area. We partnered with a truck company called Locomation. These are two semi-autonomous trucks outfitted with truck platooning technology, where the speed of this truck and the braking is controlled by the driver in this truck. And when we did this particular test, it started off in Pennsylvania. We went 300 miles round trip through Ohio up to Detroit. It was during COVID, so we carried food and water to food banks in Toledo here, and then up to Detroit, and then they made the trip back. And during that time, with the exception of construction zones, they were in this semi-autonomous truck platooning mode and didn't have any problems. The purpose of this was just not to run the route and to leverage the technology. We also looked at the laws, the regulations in each state, and all of the data requirements that they needed to be able to make this trip, and what they had to go through to have a better understanding of what a trucking company would have to do if they wanted to operate through multiple states. We're getting ready to add New Jersey too. So, and Ottawa, Canada has actually been knocking on our doors. So we could become an international collaboration. So New Jersey will probably join us this year. So the final thing I'd like to leave you with is COVID unexpectedly changed our lives. And it's changed our lives, you know, in so many different ways, right? At work, at home, at school. And some of those things are bad, some are good. I got married during COVID. I met someone during COVID. If it wasn't for COVID, we would have never met. So I love COVID. My wife loves COVID. We met, we got married during COVID. Our lives changed. But the other thing that I submit to you that has changed is technology adoption. COVID forced us, both at work and at home, to adopt technology quicker than we ever have in our society. And we did a stellar job. You know, learning how to buy online, you know, stores like Target and grocery stores, figuring out how to figure out a mechanism for them to do the shopping for us, and all we have to do is order it and drive up and they load our cars. You know, when I was a little boy back in the 1960s, went to the grocery store and there was the bag boy or the bag girl. And we would still do the shopping, but when we got to the checkout counter, they would bag our groceries, they would push the cart out to the car, load the car for us, right? And then all that went away. Well, now in the 21st century, it's even better. They do the shopping for us. We don't even have to, all we have to do is show up, or we can even select that they deliver it to our homes. But we adopted technology with rapid speed. Convergence that I talked about, I mean, because of this, has just happened at a much rapid speed than ever. Our dependency upon technology has also increased, and this all has brought a degree of resiliency too. We've learned how to deal not only with the pandemic, but how to adopt technology to be able to work, to be able to live in a whole new way. So this has been good, and it's going to propel us farther, I think, than we would be had COVID not occurred. So modernization done right, it's really simple. Technology, innovation, you have development, you deploy it, and you adopt it. And so with connected vehicles, we're already here. We've developed it, we've deployed it, we've adopted it, it continues to evolve. With electric vehicles, we've developed it, we've deployed it, and we're right in here. The adoption is just beginning in our country. So we'll see that occurring, and we'll see at the rate at which it does occur. Autonomous vehicles are more over in here right now, between development and deployment. I mean, there are a lot of tests being done by GM and Ford and others with vehicles on the road, but for the most part, they're very controlled types of environments and somewhat limited. So again, I leave with you this as you go forward in your life. Focus on the future, because if you're focusing on where you are or where things have been, you might miss the future, just like Columbus missed the future when Henry Ford did a major leap in transportation. Thank you. Questions?
Yes, question, please. We're a little beyond the time, but I mean, we still have to do the questions.
So coming to this connected and autonomous vehicles, there will be a lot of data stored in these vehicles and a lot of communication happening between vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to cloud, and vehicle to pedestrian as well. So how secure these communications are? So once an attacker attacks and takes control over the vehicle, it can lead to a lot of accidents on the roads. So what kind of methods are used to secure this data from the cyber attackers?
So there's a whole inside monitoring system within the vehicle that's being developed, and that system, that detection system, okay, will be connected to monitoring systems that GM, Ford, I mean all the other manufacturers will use these monitoring systems to monitor the vehicle. Now, if connectivity gets broke, then yes, you have a problem. But the other problem is that the dealerships, okay, some companies, some of the auto manufacturing companies have been very specific on technology within the dealerships. Some have been silent. So there's a lot of cybersecurity issues at the dealerships where these vehicles, right, are going to be initially delivered to and configured, right, and then delivered to the consumer and then also repaired. And so those networks have to be addressed in terms of cybersecurity. All of these connected vehicles connect back into the cloud, right? And so you have the security there, the security in the vehicle. You have the wireless key entry. I mean, you've got everything going on that we have in our, outside of vehicles. Everything else going on in our society is now within that vehicle. Cameras, radar, LiDAR, satellite communication, Wi-Fi, 5G, all of it. Now, the one other cool thing that I'm working on that I didn't mention was at the Ohio Department of Transportation, we're developing an integrated data exchange where we can take data from all of the cities, all of the state, the Turnpike, take all of that data on what's going on roads and collect that data and then push it back out to vehicles real time. So that's a kind of a cool project there. But yeah, there's a major cybersecurity issue. I think the good part is we've learned a lot in cybersecurity over the last 20, 30 years, but there is a cyber war going on right now, right? It's going on right now, and it's never gonna end. I was with the FBI a number of years ago, I head up in the FBI, I already knew the answer. I said, this war is never gonna end, right? He's like, you're right. I mean, it's not gonna end. So there will be losses, there'll be gains, and there'll be a lot of things learned. So cybersecurity, in a lot of students in engineering are going into the cybersecurity field in the automotive industry. Yeah. And the other thing is there's a lot of new cool jobs that didn't exist when you started college, that now exist. So, think broad when you think about your future careers. And if any of this interests you, start talking to your professors, contact, Ford, GM, explore it, find out about it, because there's a lot of cool stuff going on and they're looking for you. You guys are the future, you guys are gonna deliver this future once you get out there in the real world. That's gonna be your job.
Other questions?
When's it all gonna happen? I thought up until about this year, I thought this was gonna flip very quick because it was just all transitioning, but COVID slowed it down. And the problem is, GM, Ford, and all the startup companies involved in all of this are trying. They've been operating too long on, especially those startups on investment money, and they're low. So many of them are now shutting down. So we probably, I don't know, we'll see. The connected vehicles are there, the electric vehicles, that's going, but the autonomous, it's probably gonna be, I would say, another 10 to 15 years. We're trying to replicate what the human mind does to drive a vehicle, and it's a lot more complicated than we think.
I do have one question. What do you think would be the main reason behind the fire in the electric vehicles, and what are the techniques or tools done for the overcome of it?
Okay, repeat that question?
What do you think would be the reason behind the fire in the electric vehicles?
The fire,
Fire.
Fire.
the what?
Fire.
Oh, the fire.
Yeah.
Well, it's those batteries, to be able to produce the charge and maintain that charge, you got a lot of heat involved. And so if anything goes wrong with that, that leads to the fire. And those fires are not put out easily. So they're having to equip the fire departments with special, response units that can put out battery fires and can deal with this, and training them on how to do it. And what happens during a hurricane when people are evacuating and you don't have a charge? I mean, how are you going to get out? I mean, there's a lot of issues with this, which we're just now starting to think about and try to figure out. I mean, we're kind of behind it. But I submitted this to you as well. When Henry Ford put those first vehicles out of the assembly line, roads were not built to carry those vehicles. Bridges were not built. Those vehicles did not have safety features installed in them. I mean, all of that came rapidly. And so we have a lot of this developed today, but there's still a lot more to develop on all of this as we go.
I'm curious about many, like 100 things that you mentioned today, but one thing I would only ask is, you mentioned this 5-mile stretch in Pennsylvania where you have this inductive charging of the vehicles. So do you have any number as to what fraction of the battery charge can be recovered there? Or, I mean, is it even covering the losses due to the vehicle is moving there?
So yeah, and if you give me your business card, I can send you some information. I mean, where this is really all coming from is actually Europe. There's two companies, one in Sweden, and then there's one in Germany. The one in Germany is specializing in inductive charging through concrete, and the one in Sweden They started off with rails, but now they're into pavement and concrete as well. And these two companies are actually doing the pilot projects that are going on in the United States. And they're smaller. The Pennsylvania would be the largest, if they do it, that would be the largest section of charged road. The other projects are smaller sections in Michigan, Indiana, and down in Florida. But it's not so yeah, it's basically, you're not gonna get a full charge off of that, but the concept is that, you're out and about during the day, and this is how you're gonna get your recharge, to, get you throughout wherever you gotta go through the day and then home. But then we gotta figure out who pays for that. So there has to be some mechanism that the system, the vehicle senses.
Easy pass.
Right. It could be something like that, and that's gonna be part of what we would ultimately test out, is being able to create that transaction, shove it into our back office, build a customer. And that's why I'm talking to companies like UPS and saying, hey, do you guys wanna do this with us? Because they run these triple trailers across the state, and these are relatively shorter trips than long haul. The other problem is with long haul trucks, those Class 8 trucks, to put a battery on those trucks, the weight of it alone,
That's part of the other question,
Right.
Yeah, but we don't have time. for
Yeah,
that. But
all
this
right.
is really cool because, if that works, then that can avoid the need for all these charging stations.
Right,
And then we have a totally new philosophy there, and much more efficient.
Right, think about, I'll just use Cleveland as an example, okay? The Cleveland Guardians have a baseball game, the Browns have a football game, and then there's the Cleveland Air Show. And you've got upwards of 100,000 people that are coming into Cleveland with their electric vehicles. Where are you going to charge all of those vehicles? I can tell you today that only about 3 or 4 of those vehicles are actually gonna charge today, because they don't have the infrastructure.
Public transportation also.
Right, and like I said, we don't know what the business, there's nobody coming forward to say what the business model is to deploy all of these charging stations.
Yeah.
And then the electric grid is not ready for all of these charging
So many
stations
problems.
either,
So many.
right? And I lost electric last week for 4 days at my home. If I had electric vehicles, I'd be in trouble. Well, thank you, everyone. Great to meet you today and engage with you, and hopefully, you take some new thoughts and perspectives of things with you today as you depart.
And thanks, Brian, for another one.
Maybe the first to receive that particular presentation. So. Thanks, Brian. Okay. Yeah.